welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, March 7th, 2018. I am Dave Biddle, very happy to be joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, of course, Buckeyes had their first practice of spring ball yesterday. We got a chance to watch the first hour of spring ball. The media met with Urban Meyer afterward. Just want to go over some of the main storylines from yesterday. Obviously, the biggest is the quarterback situation. Coach Meyer was asked about, 10 different questions about the quarterbacks. I got the first couple in, and he told me, told the room that, that when I asked if there was a pecking order, he said the quarterbacks right now are neck and neck, meaning Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins. They kind of split the first team reps, if you want to call it that. When we were out there, they weren't scrimmaging. They were just going through drills. But Burrow would go first, then Haskins, then Martell for one drill, for a couple minutes. And then the next drill they would go to, Haskins would go first. But Bax, my question for you, sir, what do you make of Meyer's comments that it's neck and neck with Burrow and Haskins right now?
Well, I don't think the neck and neck thing is a surprise.
I think it's really interesting regarding Burrow that he said he had the conversations with his family about where things are going. I think, what was the quote he said? I'd love to have them both here in the fall competing. That sounds like a coach who knows that one of them's gone, even though it almost seemed wistful, right? I'd love to have them both here in the fall. He knows he's not going to have them both. It's so early. We're not going to know for sure. The coaches are going to watch how this plays out here. But you have to wonder if they're having conversations with the Haskins family the way they're having conversations with the Burrow family, which, again, goes back to what everybody sort of thinks is that this is going to end up being Haskins' gig at the end of the day. As good as Joe Burrow is, he's probably not going to beat him out. I mean, if you had to put odds on it right now, I'd say it's 4-1 it's Haskins. And the Tate Martell conversation is nice. They're giving Tate credit because he's a good team player. But I would be stunned if Tate Martell was really seriously in this conversation, right? I think Martell's being groomed to be the backup this year. But I think it's really interesting he mentioned outright that he's already talked to the Burrow family about where this is going. And you know my opinion. I've said from the start, I think Burrow loses the starting gig in the spring and transfers to Nebraska as a graduate transfer and starts for them this year and comes back to the Horseshoe to play the Buckeyes this fall. I mean, I really won't be surprised if that happens whatsoever. So that was a big telltale for me at the quarterback position. But the other thing that was interesting was him talking about center. I love the fact that Urban's like, I'm really not that worried about quarterback. I'm worried about center because at quarterback we have good players, right? Which makes me go, okay, so Brady Taylor is not exactly the shoe-in that people thought. I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Myers ended up winning this role. I mean, it's an interesting trifecta there. You have Brady Taylor, who's kind of the incumbent backup, who, hasn't really played. You have Matthew Burrell, who they haven't really been able to put anywhere yet and has kind of not really succeeded anywhere when he's been given the opportunity. And then you have Myers, who's one of the biggest recruits in the country, and is expected to start at some point in the not that distant future after redshirting last year. And, I mean, Myers is the guy I think they want to win the job, but I don't think they really have an answer yet.
And then more on the offensive line here. Yeah, I think he's trying to motivate Brady Taylor. I'd be surprised if somebody's able to beat Brady Taylor out. I mean, you're talking about Josh Myers as a redshirt freshman, which I think in the future I like the idea of Josh Myers at center a lot, so I'm glad he's repping with the twos there, but I'm not buying Matthew Burrell is really in the race to be a starter at guard or center. I know he's getting some reps at guard with the first team. They're rotating a lot of guys at guard. Brandon Bowen is in and out. He's not at full strength, but I have no doubt he'll be a starter, Brandon Bowen. He was playing at a high level before his season-ending injury, broken leg against Maryland. But let's talk more about the offensive line. Very interestingly, we come out there yesterday, and Isaiah Prince has moved over to the left side, not a big surprise. And then Thayer Munford, again, not a big surprise. We opined this would happen. And even if Prince didn't move from the right side, you can maybe make the argument coming into spring, well, maybe he's comfortable there. Maybe they'll leave Prince at right tackle. But either way, I thought Thayer Munford was going to be a starter, and it looks like that is the case. He's at right tackle. I know you felt the same way. So Isaiah Prince moving from right tackle to left tackle. Thayer Munford looks like he's going to be the starter at right tackle. I really like this, Bax.
Yeah, that's exactly what we thought would happen. Prince is your much more experienced tackle moving over to a side that's more important with all right-handed quarterbacks. Prince was a guy 2 years ago. We all remember how much he struggled. Well, he really turned it around and played excellent last year. I don't have a lot of fears about him at left tackle, and this is generally what you see in programs when the left tackle leaves and you have a very capable right tackle and sort of a younger up-and-coming guy who's your number two tackle. You put him at the right side. It's a little easier to develop. And in a year or two, we could be talking about Thayer Munford being the starting left tackle. So, I mean, that's not a surprise. And I look at this O-line and I say, you have Munford and Prince as your tackles. That's kind of set. You have Jordan and Bowen as your guards. That's kind of set. Really, the only question is center and who's the top backup tackles. I mean, that's what we're looking at here. The two deep will be interesting here, but really the only spot we're talking about is the center, but it's kind of a critical spot. So that'll be interesting as you play off over the course of the spring. But realistically speaking, in my mind, I have 4 guys' names written almost in marker as starters at this point this year already. And, hey, that's a good thing for the year if you know what your O-line rotation is going to look like if you're that confident this early on.
Jayshon Cornell, not a big story here, but we'll go over a couple guys. Jayshon Cornell moved from defensive tackle to defensive end, which is what he was recruited as originally anyway. Amir Reep has moved from corner to safety. He's bulked up. I like that a lot, by the way. Just your thoughts on Cornell and Reep?
We need defensive ends. Cornell played well last year when he was in at limited reps, too, so I think this will give him an opportunity to get on the field a little bit more. I mean, let's face it right now. You have, prior to this move, 3 guys who had played at defensive end. That was Cooper, Young, and Bosa. Now you can add him in. That gives you 4, at least gives you a 2 deep of experienced players, and then you see what you have from your young guys. As for Reep, I love the idea of getting Reep on the field. Whenever he played last year, he played very well. So if that means he's going to be a safety in his career, okay, that's fine. He can be a top backup for a year or so here. Maybe he can fight his way even on the field. But he's a guy who I would be very surprised if doesn't contribute in a pretty significant role before his career is over, based on what we saw in him last year alone. So these position moves happen at the start of spring. They probably happened months ago, and we just haven't been able to see them practice or perform yet because it's all stuff that was discussed internally during winter conditioning. So this is good that they've moved spots. I think this is helping OSU in spots where they need a little bit more depth. And I also think Reep moving to safety is another pretty important sign, especially for people like me who were pretty concerned about every quarterback not named Denzel Ward last year. It means that the coaches are feeling pretty decent about the guys who are staying at corner, that a young guy like Reep, who played some at corner and played half decent last year when he was on the field later in games, they're comfortable moving him to safety. That means they think that Sheffield's going to not have that step behind that he was this year. It means they think Jeff Okuda is going to get better. It means they think Sean Wade's going to hit the field. It means they think Damon Arnett can keep continuing to get better. That's a good sign because corner is one of the positions that, I certainly have question marks about, and we're not going to have those questions answered until we get back onto the field this fall.
I find this interesting. There was a whole bunch of cool stuff yesterday. Demario McCall, Urban Meyer said, is the number 1 kickoff and punt returner. And I was hoping that Parris Campbell would. No one's going to be sad that Mike Weber's not the kickoff returner and KJ Hill's not the punt returner. But what I was really hoping for was McCall would be one of the kickoff returners along with Parris Campbell. Maybe they still will do that. But I like McCall as the primary punt returner. Campbell is never doing that anyway. But Campbell is so good as the kickoff returner. I understand the logic of, well, he's had some concussions, so we don't want to put him out there. But, I'd like to see some evidence to back up the idea. And I guess, common sense, it makes sense, but I'll push it a little further. I've never seen evidence to back up the idea that kick returners are hurt more than, let's say, a starting wide receiver. And here's why. Let's just think we're all football fans. Yeah, you see kickoff returners get lit up every once in a while. But I would contend we see wide receivers get lit up even more because they're going over the middle. They're trying to catch the ball, looking away, and then the defender comes and hits them in the blind side. And I know you're not supposed to be able to do that now. It can just ear hole them. Where when you're returning a kick, you've already caught the ball. You don't have to worry about that aspect of it. And I know there's like 11 guys charging at you. I get that. But I just guess I don't understand the logic of Parris Campbell can be fine playing offense, but we're not going to use him as a kickoff returner and use concussions as the reason because he can just as easily, in my opinion, get a concussion playing offense as he could as a kickoff returner. Agree or disagree with that, and also talk about Demario McCall.
The Parris Campbell situation, to me, is the most uncomfortable I've ever been with Ohio State football and the way they treat players. If Parris Campbell is a risk to get a concussion on the kick return, he's a risk to get a concussion as a football player in general. And if you're worried about Parris Campbell's concussion, then he shouldn't be playing football. It's that simple. He's either okay or he's not.
There's we don't want to get him hit as much. The argument used to be, we don't want to have our running back get so many hits because, he's going to get beat up and wear down over time, right? I can understand that, right? That's attrition. You're talking about concussions. If he's a risk to get concussions, he's a risk at any point in time. He either can or can't play. And I hate this dance around it. And in an era where we're all becoming more and more aware of concussions and more people are not letting their athletic sons play football because of concussions, it almost seems irresponsible. And I hate to say this about Ohio State because I felt like they've always treated player safety with the utmost importance under Urban Meyer, but I can't reconcile this one. It's really uncomfortable. It's something I have a 1,500-word piece in a bucket of bowls that I haven't published yet that has been sitting for about a month based on this Parris Campbell situation that I just don't get the logic. He's either good to play football or he's not good to play football at all. There's no put your pinky toe in the water crap. So I'm glad McCall is going to be the kick returner because I think he's super talented. Everybody remembers I was all about him last year. I think he can be a huge player for the Buckeyes. But if Parris Campbell can't return kicks, he shouldn't be playing football because he's susceptible to concussions and his career needs to be over. But if he's okay, then it shouldn't be a concern about him returning kicks because that's what he does best. There's no middle ground to me, and it's really uncomfortable, to put it best.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. I was just going to end the show there. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Beanie Wells situation, piggybacking on Parris Campbell having concussions. And I don't know. I mean, Beanie has not specified if how many concussions he had. I'm sure playing running back, being a star running back in high school, playing for 3 years at Ohio State, playing 4 years in the NFL. We knew about his lower body injuries, but and that's really, it was a blessing in disguise that he didn't play an extra year because, he had that Achilles injury because that just would have meant more shots to the head. But he did play 4 years in the NFL, and now has some CTE symptoms, and hopefully it sounds like they caught it really early, comparatively speaking to some of the other guys. But unless I'm missing somebody, this is the first time this has hit the Ohio State family. And, I think Beanie's going to be fine from everything I'm hearing, but you never know. Just to address that, I mean, you're talking about Parris Campbell and how you can tell that affects you and just you're very conflicted. Just your thoughts on Beanie coming out and saying he's having some of these issues.
Yeah, the Beanie thing's something that we've been discussing for a while. I mean, obviously you've been filling in for him in a show on 97.1 for a long time, very capably, by the way, I should add. And, a guy like Beanie who...
Is that like calling J.T. Barrett an adequate passer, by the way?
No, I didn't say adequate. I said capable. There's a difference. You actually, if I called you a capable passer, you could complete a short pass. There'd be a difference. Okay. So,
they're kind of synonyms. I don't know. Okay, go ahead.
In Back's world, it's not exactly synonymous. Let's go with that. But, the truth is, what's going on with Beanie is something you worry about with every person who plays football. Every single person who plays football. And I'm not one of those namby-pamby people saying take hits out of the game, otherwise it's ballet, blah, blah, blah. But, seeing what Beanie's going through at a very young age, Beanie's younger than me. And so that's kind of scary. And seeing Parris Campbell just get laid out on the field a couple times. Look, concussions are a real serious issue, and football's going to have to address this. And it's going to have to address this in a very serious fashion in the very near future. And, the truth is, you're right. I'm glad Beanie tore his Achilles because he doesn't need more shots to the head. He's financially set for life. He seems like a really good guy. He has a family. You look at Beanie and you say, man, I don't know if Beanie's even 30 yet, and they're already talking about him having CTE. And this is something that they don't really have a cure for. They're trying all kinds of crazy stuff and money's going into it, right? But money's been going into things like spinal cord injuries for decades and they haven't come up with a real good solution either, right? So, you see these things and, concussions are a deadly serious thing at this point. I mean, you've seen what's happened to a lot of players who've had those severe concussion issues, and that they have the brains of 75 or 80-year-olds, right? So this Campbell thing, it's just another thing along the lines with Beanie. If Campbell can't play full-on in football, there should be no such thing as half-ass cleared to play football. And I don't think, I don't know his medical history here. I don't know if Urban's even explicitly said that he's not returning him because he's worried about him being getting concussed if he's on kick returns. That's just what we're all assuming because it's the only reason you wouldn't have Parris Campbell returning every single flipping kick. But the concussion thing's a real serious, concerning thing. And it's the one thing that ever puts a pause on my absolute nutbag Ohio State, support. And it's because you see guys like Parris Campbell who, while he's still playing, we're worried he's a concussion risk. You see a young man like Beanie Wells have to spend a month and change away from his job just to get brain treatment. That's a scary thing. And, if we're not taking that as seriously as we should be, it's really going to undermine a lot of the things great about Ohio State football. So, I should be clear here. I'm not accusing Urban Meyer of playing kids with concussions because that's absolute BS. But, you have to wonder what the logic is with Campbell, and especially seeing what happened with Beanie. And there's probably, we talk about him being the first Buckeye that this is a big deal with. He's not the first. He's just the first we've heard. There's others. I mean, a guy like Chris Spielman in the 80s had one game against Michigan where he made a tackle and knocked himself silly, right? And then was completely lost the next play, threw up between plays, and went back and finished the game and finished 20-something tackles. You want to tell me that wasn't a concussion? So it's the nature of the game. And it's something that eventually we're all going to have to reconcile with. And, everybody has to think about it in their own way. And certainly it's pretty obvious I'm very conflicted by it in general.
Yeah, it's a uncomfortable topic to say the least. And regarding Parris Campbell, maybe they will eventually say, hey, if you're good enough to play wide receiver, meaning healthy enough, then you can be kickoff returner, or if they're going to pick one role for him, maybe do the kickoff returning and not as much wide receiver because they have a lot of depth at wide receiver. And frankly, unless he's catching the ball close to the line of scrimmage or getting jet sweeps, his hands are just, not that good. So we'll see what they do. But, hey, I'm with you. The discussion about concussions is real. I mean, we can just try and ignore it, but I think that would be silly, and it's very uncomfortable. I love football. I don't ever want to see anything happen to football long term. I'm glad they're doing things to make things safer, but yeah, I'm with you, buddy. It's very uncomfortable, and but I'm glad we're talking about it. We'll see what happens with Parris Campbell and some of these other guys that are dealing with it. Beanie Wells, hopefully the best for Beanie. Good guy. For those that don't know, Beanie's wasn't just a really good football player. He's a genuinely good guy too. So wish the best for Beanie. Also wish the best for my man Matt Baxendell. He was also hit in the head one too many times. No, shouldn't make a light of that. But
no, 20 or 30 too many times.
But good having you on as always. He is the people's champ, Matt Baxendell. You can catch his column every Sunday. It is the Bucket. So thank you, Bax, and thanks to all listeners out there for tuning in to the show. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.